Press record. There we go. Speak of you. Here we are. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining tonight. I have pressed record because I know there's a few mums who couldn't make it tonight, but are really keen to listen to what Nicole has to say. Nicole, we met, I think, in a networking group, actually, didn't we? And we were chatting about the amazing work that you do. And for myself, as a mum who just faces the everyday stuff that gets thrown at us, but also having children with some neurodiversity, and also just those struggles as they go through the aging process of childhood. It's a lot these days for our young ones. And so I reached out to Nicole, and I think you started working with us in January, maybe middle of Jan, late Feb. Yeah. And it's been amazing. And I've been lucky enough, because she works privately with Arthur, but I've listened in a little bit, and it's really interesting what Nicole does to help our children to think in a very positive way and to empower them to really, I feel like, take charge of their mental well-being. And I think that's such an important thing to do, to help children to support themselves as they go through this thing we call life. And before I introduce you, Nicole, somebody is about to go to bed, but when he saw you on the call tonight, he was like, oh, she's here. And you didn't know I was talking to Nicole tonight, did you? Do you want to come and say hi to everybody? So this is Arthur. Arthur is 10, about to go to secondary in September, but Arthur knows Nicole very well. Do you want to share quite quickly how you think Nicole is helping you?
Well, she's helping me understand in a way positive way, and very nice, and what I can improve like next day, and help my days get better, and what's positive sides of stuff, and really fun online stuff.
Yeah, and you do meditations, which you found quite tricky at the beginning, didn't you?
Yes, she's a very nice, kind person.
Oh, well, that's nice, Nicole, isn't it? Yeah, really.
Thanks, Arthur.
Yeah, getting you to think really positive things and plan out your day of how it might look if it was, you know, an exceptionally wonderful day. Yeah, and it's been amazing, hasn't it?
I've tried the meditation, I was so bad. I had to have my eyes open, but last session I didn't. Well, I moved around a bit, but my eyes were still shut.
You're finding it getting easier, aren't you? Okay. Thanks, babe. You better go to bed. Get some early sleep. Rest that brain of yours. Thank you. I had to put on my pink lippy as well tonight, because I suddenly see you on Thursday, Nicole.
I love.
And then I suddenly saw Nicole in her bright glory, and I realised I was very dowdy, so I've put on my pink wild watermelon lipstick just in honour of my pal Nicole. So Nicole, it's really lovely to have you on tonight's call, and I think the value that you have to share is massively important, especially after lockdown and 2022 and what us parents are helping our children with. Would you please just give us a bit of a background as to how, like, what you do, but how you got into it? Because all of these journeys start with ourselves, don't they, typically?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've obviously not always been a clinical hypnotherapist. I've done a lot of other stuff before I even got to this point. But I've always had a massive interest of working with or alongside young people with additional needs. And I spent a lot of time trying to work out where this started from, but I had a very close cousin of mine who actually taught me how to read, who spent most of her life in a wheelchair. She only reached the age of 22 before she had some brain issues and unfortunately passed away. But when I was at school, I was really fortunate, bearing in mind this is the 80s, that we have a special needs school in my local town in Bourne, and on a Friday afternoon they would bring their year group that was equivalent to our year group of primary school, and we would sit with each other and get paired up and work together for the afternoon. Now, in my head, I know that was very, very forward thinking of that primary school to do that. And I've always known all through my life I'm a very inclusive person. So, you know, I don't judge people. I don't care what labels you come with. You are you. And I carry that throughout my work now, as well as I have done throughout my life. So I spent 10 years working in hospitality. I originally ended up in Leicester going to do mental health nursing. And I actually had my first experience of depression when I was 18, and really knew that it wasn't an area I wanted to work in because it was high end. It was full on, you know, secure units, medication, all of that. And it didn't feel right. It just felt very clinical, and it wasn't an area that I enjoyed. So weirdly ended up working in a pub and doing some work in the community with adults with, at the time, learning disabilities, supporting them to integrate into the community. And I loved it. And I worked both these jobs for quite a while before moving back to Bourne when I was 27. And then found what I deemed at the time my life choice job, which was to work with kids with additional neurodiverse and physical needs in a short break service. So spending 11 years of my life doing that, I loved it. It was a 30-hour week job. It was sleep-ins, it was night shifts, it was all over the place. But it was about supporting them with the best of their capabilities at the time. But it was very hands-on and at times very physical. It was really challenging. You know, we're talking, you know, a couple of days a week. You know, if you came out unhurt, you were lucky. And this was working with children from the age of 6 to 18. And while I was there, obviously, you know, the other side of this, met my husband, and, you know, we decided to get married and have children. And I experienced my first part of hypnotherapy when I had my son, who's now 10, Charlie. We had quite a traumatic birth, if I'm really honest, and it was a bit shite. And my first experience of hypnotherapy was my previous employer rang me up and said, I'm training to be a hypnotherapist. Would you be a guinea pig? In the profession, we call them hypno pigs. But yeah, that's what I was. And after 6 weeks, all my social anxiety left. I didn't really care about feeding my little boy in public because I was solo breastfeeding at the time. And it really flipped things around for me, really supported me in my headspace, and more importantly, gave me something a lot more different to focus on. But I also then realised that I probably had anxiety since the age of 11. No one had ever seen it or heard it, but I used to carry around this feeling all the time that I would get things wrong and be pulled out of class and all of that sort of stuff. And it would sit quite tight in my chest a lot of the time. And then came the joys of having my daughter Devon, who I chose to have as a hypno baby. So I do hypno birthing as well as supporting people one-to-one. And I had the most amazing birth. We worked on some birth trauma from Charlie, and I actually had a 2.5-hour labour with Devon. She was delivered at home, no help. So weirdly, I didn't want any help. My husband delivered my daughter for us, and the midwife was late. She was actually 50 minutes late, which meant I got my 50 minutes of cord clamping. Thank you very much. And the paramedics rocked up and did the whole, you know, take her out of the sack because she was delivered in a amniotic sac, and it was just amazing. Had a bath, went to bed, tucked in by the midwife at midnight. Nice to meet you, love. And that was it. And so Devon was actually not only my hypno baby, but she was my dream baby. She was the baby that I always wanted to have that kind of experience, that birth with. And she's now 6. And that's what got me starting thinking I really enjoy sort of like looking at like the start of the line with young people, just purely because I know that my son was a very traumatic birth, very full on, not very pleasant. My daughter was this chilled, beautiful, at home, exactly how I wanted it. And she's the complete opposite. She's just like, whatever, let's go with the flow, not bothered. Charlie's highly sensitive, very emotional, attached to me like Velcro majority of the time, even though he's 10, and he struggles to do anything new. He doesn't like change. He's hypersensitive to his environment, and you know, I know full well that was kind of impacted from the beginning. So we kind of decided, no, I didn't decide. After having Devon, I got a phone call to say, from the guy that I originally had hypnotherapy with, I'm starting a course, would you come and join us? And I was like, right, okay, so I have a 3-year-old and I have a 4-month-old that I'm solely breastfeeding, and now you want me to train to be a hypnotherapist, which is not something I really want to do, but okay, let's see how it fits. So did the course, and actually I think it was month 8 of the course, I suddenly went, oh my God, I think I can create a business out of this. And I can take all my knowledge of working with children and actually work with them in a way that is very compassionate, very heartfelt, and very kind, rather than let's manage the behavior. Actually, let's manage them and get them to support themselves. And that's how it all started. My first case study was a selective mute, 11 sessions of hypnotherapy. She was talking. A year later, she got her first detention at secondary school for talking in class. Yes, that was like amazing. And it's just kind of progressed. So over the last 5 years, so I celebrated my 5th year last year. Over the last 5 years, I've had this whole kind of, am I going down this route? Am I not? You know, anybody that knows when they're in business on their own, you kind of like throw everything out and then you take what you want and then you throw it out again and everything like that. And I suddenly realized actually the outcomes that I was getting working with young people were pretty phenomenal. You know, and the ability to understand that, you know, we're talking, you know, starting to see a change in young people from 6 weeks. And, you know, if we're committed and we stay on that line, on average, 8 to 12 sessions of solution-focused clinical hypnotherapy will support young people to be able to start thinking differently, but more importantly, stay in that state so they know and they become more self-aware of managing their own behavior and how their brain works, because we don't get taught how we work. And that was one thing that stood out for me. No one said, this is why you're anxious. No one said, this is why you're depressed. They just said, have some tablets, that will fix it, crack on. And for a lot of people, that is how we feel we should be supported. So now, not only do I do one-to-one, so I see on average between 35 clients a week in my practice, adults and children, for various different things. I also teach, so I now teach in Nottingham and in Peterborough with a company called the Clifton Practice Hypnotherapy Training School, and I also supervise 12 other solution-focused hypnotherapists that I have trained previously over the last couple of years. And I'm now at that point whereby, you know, I've been involved in some big projects, some of which I can't talk about yet because the outcomes haven't been shared. But it's really, every time I sit and think, you know, is this it? Because we all do. I will get another person tag me on my page and go, this happened today, thank you very much. And it's almost like the universe just goes, boom, there you go, you should still be here. I have a massive passion for pineapples alongside being a clinical hypnotherapist, and majority of my office is full of pineapples. They usually come as gifts from people just saying thank you. I've received 3 in the last week. It's probably getting a bit obsessional. I'm not sure. I should see someone about that. But yeah, more importantly, I don't sit with a problem. More than anything, from experiencing a mental health breakdown myself, where hypnotherapy was the thing that got me out of it, to you know, supporting me with birth trauma. I know firsthand how beneficial this has been for me and my headspace, but also knowing I don't have to sit and go, here's my life, blah, at anyone, and they pick it apart for me and ask me, what would you have done differently? But, you know, becoming a problem solver rather than a solution focused perspective. And that's why I love what I do, because it's teaching people to understand that you have the solutions. I just need to sit here and support you to find them. We are all in a position whereby when we are available or able to access our intellectual brain, we have those moments where we go, I'm not doing this, but I could do that, you know. But anxiety, depression, anger, all of that gets in the way. And if we are always in that primitive space all of the time, we just keep doing the same patterns of behavior. You know, we just keep repeating that pattern. We just repeat that addiction. We just repeat that sugar rush. We just repeat that alcohol, whatever it is that becomes your coping mechanism. We repeat it until someone sits with us and says, right, what are you going to do differently about it, and how are you going to do it? You know, the brain doesn't change overnight, but if you support it and you show up and you're consistent with it, it will start to pick up on the positive chemicals that you're working with, rather than just doing the easy way out, which is always, here's my primitive receptor, boom, have this one today, that will help you. And yeah, that's it really. That's my like little story in a nutshell as to how I've got here and what I do and why I'm now so so passionate about it, and also now teach it too, because ultimately, if we were all taught how we work and how our headspace works, and, you know, had the therapy that supports us to find our own answers, it becomes a lot easier. You guys all know, if someone tells you to do something, you'll sit and go, yeah, all right, whatever. And 9 times out of 10, you're not going to do it. You're not going to want to do it. And you'll put all the obstacles up in front of you as to why you're not going to do it. Whereas if you come up with your own solutions and they're small enough, then you have the ability to start utilizing that and move forward.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, I was doing the maths. I was trying to work out how you see 30 to 35 clients a week, plus carry on being mum, plus teach, plus do all the other stuff and the projects, and that's a lot of hours a day.
I run a lot.
It's amazing. But I was interested, I mean, like, when people say, like, my perception, and I like to think I'm quite well versed or educated in different therapies and things like that. When people say to me hypnotherapy, up to about a year ago, before I met you, before I met Claire and people like that, I thought it was laying in a chair, they put you under Paul McKenna style, they put you under, you're in a sort of trance, and they talk to you, and you kind of, you know, they can adapt the way that your brain works. That's not what's happening when you talk with Arthur or when you do your work. Can you explain a little bit more about like, how does it work? Because I remember after one session, and Nicole got involved with me, or I asked Nicole to help us because we were going through a bit of a trauma with something that happened with us. And after one session, I just went, it's not quick enough. I need you to discuss the problem. I need you to do this. She said, Claire, that's not how I work. This isn't. And I was panicking, you know, because when your child's struggling, you want things dealt with really quickly. But it's been so interesting. And actually, when you were saying 8 to 12 weeks, I guess we're 7 weeks in, he's just a different child. Like we've done full turnaround, and he's just so happy. And it's really interesting. And so I'd love you just to explain a little bit about how you work for people like me who thought you just go into a Paul McKenna trance and start treating your dog, your shoe like a dog, and eating lemons like an apple or something like that. How does it work?
I think more than anything, you know, whenever I say to people what I do, they all go, oh, don't look into my eyes. And I always follow up with, hang on a minute, let me just go get my chickens, because that's always the next line. You know, do you help people cluck like chickens? And it's like, no. Ultimately, when I work with anybody, I sit with them and go through, you know, what's going on right now? What do you want to achieve? So where would you want to be by seeing me? And we look not only just at, have we got any other conditions alongside this, but we look at how we're sleeping. Are we taking any medication? Are there any other fears and issues that are getting in the way at the moment? And have we got any symptoms? You know, we're getting stomach aches, are we getting headaches and migraines, things like that? What sort of state are we in? Are we currently having panic attacks and all of that? And then after that, we sit down and describe how the brain works in relation to what's going on at the moment, and really getting people to understand, more importantly, that if we're consistently worried and we're consistently consumed with the what ifs, the buts and the maybes, then whether that's going over previous stuff and going over things that have happened in the past, or ultimately negatively forecasting the future, which we're all really good at, and especially over the last 2 years have been epic at doing, we start to fill up what I refer to as a stress bucket. And that stress bucket allows our body to go into that fight or flight system, and our responses become anger, anxiety, depression, and all of the symptomology that goes along with it. So if you listed out the symptomology, we do this on the training course. If you list out the symptomology, it's never ending. There's loads of different things that your body will show you physically when there's a lot of stress going on mentally. But more importantly, supporting you to understand that actually, if we are consistent in showing our brain the brain chemicals it needs to stay in control, and we stay on that track all of the time, the brain can then rewire itself. So it's not static, it's not a brick. And the more neuroplasticity in the brain, the more ability we have to change it, the more ability we have to be consistent. It will then start working from a more solution focused perspective, as in the intellectual brain, the conscious part that is you. Now, when you're in this part of the brain, we know it feeds off positive neurochemicals. We know that when we're in this part of the brain, more importantly, the research has shown that if we're working with other people, if we're thinking positively, and more importantly, doing those positive actions, it will create a chemical response in the brain that will give us serotonin. So serotonin is our happy hormone. I like to call it super serotonin because it is. And if we're constantly looking at what's been good in my day, where have I done these three things? So I refer to it as the 3 Ps. So they're positive actions, positive interactions, and positive thoughts. And ultimately, where are they going to come from in my day? So once we start working on those and asking ourselves, and I ask my clients every session, it always starts with what's been good. I've got to switch on the intellectual brain, and you can't think if you're going to rock up being mardy, grumpy, anxious, or whatever. We've got to get that brain thinking for itself. We know that it's going to start working with those chemicals pretty much straight away once we start to get into that positive pattern of behavior. Now, psychotherapy, which is what I also do, which is like half of the session, is solution focused questioning. So we work on a scaling system. Where are you on a scale of 1 to 10 today? And then we work questioning around if you were one step on that scale. So say, for example, you're a 6 and you woke up tomorrow and a wonderful miracle happened and you were a 7 out of 10. What would you be doing differently? Or what small thing would you be doing differently? Because the goal can't be too big, because if you don't do it, you're going to feel like crap, and that's going to go in your stress bucket and we start all over again. And so therefore, we've got to think of those tiny little bits that we're going to start noticing. What's that small step you're going to take to enable you to do it, and then support that person to see themselves doing it. The brain is an amazing tool. It doesn't know the difference between real and imagination. So if you can imagine it doing something, then your brain goes, cool, we're often going to do that. And the more we do it, the more ability we see it doing it, the more opportunity we have to then create it in the future. And then every week is the same. What are we going to keep moving forward towards? What is it going to look like, and how we're going to get there? Now, the nice bit is what you refer to as meditation, Chloe, I refer to as trance. Many people say, oh, there's all of these different levels of trance. I just call it trance. It doesn't matter what state you go into, as long as your body is relaxed. It accesses the rest and digest system, more importantly, but understanding as well that you've just done loads of really positive work. And once you go into that relaxed state, your brain can then access its subconscious to put in place those things that you want to do to move forward with it. And more importantly, while you're in that state, your brain's doing a lot of background work as well while you're nice and relaxed, rather than saying, I must do this next week. It's then able to give it more opportunity to work on it while you're in that relaxed state, and hopefully leave feeling a lot more relaxed than when you arrived as well. So I did a relaxation this morning with a mum, because I gift relaxations to the local raffle for parents, which she rocked up this morning, and she didn't want to get off the couch. So, that was just 40 minutes of chilling out. She rolled over with the blanket and went, no, don't make me go back out there. And that was just a relaxation. That's not even just a session. And the same thing happens every single week, which is why it's really great for kids, because they know what I'm going to do, they know what to expect, and there's no change other than them. I stay consistent all the way through, I stay disciplined all the way through, and I work in a space that allows them to move, and I just stay in that space that supports them when they do it.
Awesome. So yeah, and everything you're saying is exactly as is with Arthur, and I think that was just so funny when he came in and saw your face, and he just lit up and was like, oh, because I think he just knows he's now got his routine, hasn't he? I have to go and get him a snack. He sits down, you're like, just eat your snack, Arthur, it's okay. And you just start chatting about the day, and and it really, for me, having a child that can never see the positive in anything, and now he's starting to talk about what was good about the day when he comes out of school. So what would be some of the things that, as parents, because I'm really keen for you to share more about how people can reach out to you and what they can do to sort of get in touch with you for some tips or advice, or even to have their child work with you, because you do Zoom, and because you're quite far away from a lot of us. We're down in Kent, you're up in Midlands, aren't you, or a bit further north? Yeah,
so I'm in the middle of Lincolnshire, South Lincolnshire. And if I'm really honest, up until COVID, I'd never thought about doing online therapy, and I practically lost my practice in that first week. And I thought, well, I've got two choices. I show up as mum and just crack on and, you know, go and get a job in Tesco's, because clearly they needed me then, or I choose to work online. And it was just phenomenal. Like 2 or 3 weeks, my practice was back at where it needed to be, because I could just offer exactly what I do online in Zoom. Obviously with restrictions and stuff, it was very difficult. I wasn't allowed to see anyone at all, like very many of us therapists were, until like the second lockdown, when they kind of eased things off a bit. But it was almost like I didn't get this far for someone to shut me down overnight. This just is not going to happen. So that's when I started networking more. That's how come I found you, Chloe, online and stuff. And so now I can offer this UK wide. I've been doing a bit of work in Europe as well, which is epic. So, you know, it's so nice to work sort of like across the seas, because that was something that was never even in my kind of vision. But I do free initial consultation, because I don't believe that you should work with someone that you don't like. So you will always come and have an initial consultation, child, adult, either or. I will always give you my all on that session. And if I don't fit, I will find someone that does, because there's a number of people, a number of colleagues that I have that would move that forward. The work I do, I put on my social media quite a lot, Facebook and Instagram, which is just Hummingbird Hypnotherapy. There was a great review today from a young girl that was absolutely petrified of going to the dentist, and she's got to have a lot of dental work over the next 6 months. And I've got it's a bit gruesome, I think, but she's managed to take a selfie after she's had her first 2 big teeth out, and she's wedged up with her headphones in with me on her audio while she had them took out. And she shared it with me this afternoon on my page. And I was just like, that's just amazing. And her mum was like, because she would have panic attacks before going in, they couldn't even open her mouth to do the work. So stuff like that. Fears and phobias are massive, especially like germ phobia, fear of being sick. All of that has kind of like exacerbated tenfold over the last couple of years, more than anything. Repetitive patterns of behavior, OCD, severe anxiety, low mood, low confidence, motivation, school refusal. The list is endless. And yeah, so anything that people are struggling with from a mindset perspective, and you know, barriers and blocks and things like that, they're all the sort of things that I work with. And I'm really fortunate that the people that I do work with are really open about sharing my work and giving me testimonials and stuff, so that other people can see how I've helped. And then the normal stuff, like, you know, getting someone to Mexico in 2 days, that sort of thing, it happens. You know, scared of flying, can you get me to Mexico? Yeah. Let's go. And you know, and just genuine, like, I support small businesses. I run a network called the Pineapple Network, which is local to me. And I just have a genuine passion for people to actually feel confident and happy in what they're doing, you know, and understand how they tick and how they work. And to be able to share that with people is just so empowering, because it's like, well, that's why you're doing that, you know, because this bit is going, don't do it. Whereas the best bit of you wants you to crack on and do those things. Whereas, you know, your primitive brain is keeping you in a safe place. And that's how I end up working with both.
Amazing. And like, yeah, the last 2 years, I think the biggest crisis in health is going to be mental health. And thank goodness there's people like you, because as you said, you know, going to the GP and taking medication is one thing, and there's certainly a place for that. But equally, can we do that forever? Or when can we actually start working on ourselves to start taking control, understanding how our brains work, being empowered? Everything we do is about empowering. I know, Nicole, you're a big fan of the products and what I do from my side in terms of nutrition, the gut-brain connection. I know that's probably how we first started really talking, was you do all the mind stuff and I'm trying to do the nutrition stuff, and together that does wonderful things. But yeah, that the health crisis is huge. I had 2 sort of final questions for you. One is, Megan said, I'm a mental health nurse. I love my job. Yeah, must be very varied and full on, and very rewarding as well. But with so 2 questions. One is, I'll start with this one, is, are there some little bits that as maybe parents we can sort of take on board to help our children to think more positively, or to start helping that, not the primitive brain, but the more advanced brain. Because obviously then the next step is working with you, but are there little things that we just need to know as parents as to how to speak to our children, our little ones?
So the first thing I would always say, and it's something that I've done with my kids from the get-go, as soon as they come out of school, ask them what's been good. Don't jump in, don't pry, don't delve in, just ask them what's been good and just wait for a response. The most uncomfortable part of that is going to be the fact that they're going to be quiet, because their brain's got to transition from school to mum or home or whatever. And then eventually, once they start getting into that pattern of behavior, they will just tell you. So they've had a full-on day, the brain's been wired full on within all of this routine, and they've come out and they need to I like to call it defrag, as in, you're probably going to get the behavior, you're the mum, you're going to get it. So before they get the behavior, jump in and ask them what's been good, and do it all the time. Every time they finish school, do it. On the weekend, at the end of a Saturday, sit down with all of you as a family, what's been good today, do it again on a Sunday, what's been good today. And also, if they have got a problem, it's not about not listening to the problems. It's about listening and then asking them, so what do you want to do differently about it? Because they then take their own power back and choose the next step. Now, if it's something ridiculous, like my son will go, well, I just want to go to Legoland, won't I? Because then that'll make me really happy. And you're like, okay, so we'll put Legoland over here. What small thing you're going to be doing or want to do differently to change tomorrow? One of the ladies on my recent course hadn't even thought about asking what her daughter would want to do after school, or what would make her morning easier. If you could choose how your morning was before you went to school, because ultimately, and I've experienced this myself, when you've got a young person with anxiety and they're throwing every emotion at you as a parent, and you're just trying really hard to get them to school, it's about saying, okay, so this happened today and that's fine. I don't really want to focus on the behavior, though it's not on, but I want to ask you, what can we do differently about it tomorrow so we don't get to that point? And it takes a bit of time, but it's constantly just giving them the control back, putting them in charge of how they want to do their day, how they want to change it. So then they're becoming self-manageable, instead of us going, I want you to do this and do this and do this, and here's your to-do list, and here's your now and next, and here's your next board. If they're fully communicable with you, then ask them. So this is what we had today, and I don't really think that's great. And I know you didn't like it either. So what can I do differently for you? And what can you do differently for you, so tomorrow's easier? And some of the things that even my son came out with were, he wanted to put all his clothes out the night before, so he knew where everything was. He wanted to walk to school because it knows he feels better if he walks than taking the car. And don't rush me were his 3 things when I asked him, because he really struggled with all of those: rushing, where everything was, and getting to school. If you go on my website, there is actually a downloadable PDF in PDF sheet form, and it asks you what's been good and to list them. And it even has a question on the bottom that says, what do you want to do differently? So you can just print it off as many times as you want, and just, stick it in a notebook or stick it in a scrapbook, or even better, get them to choose their own journal, take them shopping, here's your £5 pocket money, grab a journal, and let's start following this format every night. What's been good today? And what are you going to do differently tomorrow? But ask them at points during the day, and just keep it consistent, because you'll be really surprised the information they tell you. Because before that, my kids tell me nothing. Unless I got an email from school, I didn't know what was going on, to be fair. And they're just like, deny all of the time. But the important part of all of that is, as a parent, we always want to jump in and go, come on then, what's been good? Come on, tell me what's been good. Just ask them once and just let it sit and just wait. And you might not get the answer in the next 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but after tea, they might go, oh, I've got something good to tell you today, Mum. And then you're like, wicked, how did that make you feel? Really get them to get involved in those emotions so that they can reimagine it again and go over it. Because we all know how uncomfortable feels. We all know how anxiety feels. And so we need to tap into the positive emotions that come with the what's been good. Why did it make you feel so happy doing that? And really, that at this point, this is where my cheerleading hat comes on. I'm like, yeah, you know, and really give them the big guns. Really go for it. They would probably be my top 2 tips to do. And also there's a downloadable audio to listen to if anybody wanted to use that track. You can get that on my website as well. It's under Children's Mental Health and Resources, and there's a little password, and it's HH2020.
Amazing. So what we're going to do is I will share this recording into the group tomorrow, and if we can put all of your website details. Your website is hummingbirdhypnotherapy.co.uk. The password is HH2020.
Yeah.
Onto the resources. You do free discovery calls for parents to come in, have a chat with you about what's going on, find out how the sessions might work, and obviously find out how it works. I mean, I do 6 with Arthur. And finally, I do know, Nicole, that there were a couple of parents who want to watch this, and a couple on the call whose children are going through neurodivergence, so similar to my situation. Obviously, we've talked about phobias and we've talked about anxieties and things like that. When dealing with a neurodivergent child, ADHD, ASD, autism, how, because I'm aware of the time as well, how do you help them best? How can your work help them? Because I see it all the time in the groups that I'm in and stuff, and it's my personal journey. It's like there must be something out there that can help other than just medication, and then increasing the medication, increasing it even more, and dealing with the school calls and all the stuff that's going on. How can we help our children who struggle just in the day-to-day stuff, or maintaining information, or for me, self-confidence, self-esteem, self-worth? When you have a child with additional needs, how does your work really come in to help?
It's exactly the same.
Okay.
It's exactly the same as all the stuff that I've just explained. I don't do anything different, you know, purely because why would I? You know, the information is different in respect of how it's explained, how the brain works. But more importantly, I also then get the young people to sit and say, oh, you know, let's have a look at where we are when this happens, and let's have a look at where we are when this behavior happens. You know, obviously, I need to make sure that we can communicate and that it's effective and it works really well. I need to make sure that they feel happy and safe again working with me, but also with a lot of the young people that I've been working with face-to-face in my local area, just talking to school, talking to Senko to just implement their the ability to utilize the 3 Ps. They use the audio in school when they go into sensory sessions and things like that. They have downtime, they have chill out time, all of those things, just to supporting them to go back into that rest and digest phase, that relax point. The more often we can get our young people into that space, even if it's just for 2 or 3 minutes, you know, it's giving them the ability to know, as Arthur said the other week, it's the wow factor. You know, when he finally realized that his little brain could just relax a little bit when he's in that space and just go, wow, I've not experienced this before. It's just amazing, you know, and to know that it takes 20 minutes, the audio takes 20 minutes, you know, the writing down what's been good doesn't take a great deal of time, and you can implement it at different stages throughout the day. But you just have to be consistent and just understand that for some young people, it might take a little bit longer. Others might pick it up because they like routine. You know, ultimately, they like to do these things. And that was something that I find with a lot of young people that like routine. As soon as I say, this is how I work and it's the same format, they'll go, thank you. Nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to scare me. I don't have to worry about seeing you because I know exactly what to expect. And that's, you know, like I say, that's the nice bit about it.
Amazing. Thank you very much. I've posted your website and the password for the audio into this chat group and also into the live as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can certainly testify, because when we did the first meditation, I mean, Arthur was like, and he's up and he's sitting up, he was playing with the laptop, and I stayed in for the first session, didn't I? I laid on the bed and I just had my back to him and was just like, don't acknowledge it. And afterwards I was like, I'm so sorry, Nicole. He said, it's fine. Like, I deal with this all the time. Doesn't matter if he's moving around, he'll get into it. And now he does, doesn't he? He just does a full session with his eyes closed. And that's been amazing for him, because it's very hard for him to sit still and have that focus. So yeah, they don't have to be, you know, because I was like, I don't understand everything she's saying. I said, it's fine, darling. It'll get through to your brain. Just think about what you want to think about. If you want to think about Roblox, that's fine. Like, you don't, because he was trying so hard to focus on your voice, but obviously it's very hard if you've never done anything like that before. So yeah, I said to, has anyone got any questions? Tracy, how do you deal with bullying, causing your child to doubt themselves and their self-confidence?
So ultimately, you know, young people go through bullying, and more importantly, looking at those things that they're already doing despite that happening. Bullying is big. It feels big. It's not nice. It's not a great deal to be, not a great deal or a great place to be in. But ultimately, again, it's about just having that conversation. What would be different if it wasn't happening? Is there anything I can do that's going to support you in this space? And beginning to realize that it's not them. You know, ultimately bullying is the person that's bullying you. It's not them. You know, they have done nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong with their work. Just, you know, and I hate to say the word unfortunate, but people do. You know, my young lad has had this with a couple of year groups that he's transitioned into, and we've had to go into school and have a chat and say, look, we need to move some tables and chairs around. I want different playground times, because this is not something that I want my little boy to come to school with, especially when he's already anxious. Ultimately, you know, when you think about the focus, as much as we want to focus on the bullying, we've got to still look at what are they still doing despite it's happening. You know, it's almost like we have to take the problem out and just park it there for a minute and just get them to focus on what are they still able to do despite this going on, because that confidence will come from them seeing the stuff that they are still doing despite this going on. I don't have a massive magic wand, and, you know, unfortunately bullying does happen in school, but it's about working with young people to notice when they come to me and say what's been good. I will find those little bits that they've done in that week and go, how did you do that then? How did you manage to feel like that in that space? How were you able to be so confident jumping off the side of the pool into the deep end? Because you can transition that confidence and that feeling to a space where you're not feeling so confident. What would that look like? Because when we start to focus, and that's what the what's been good is so good for, because it gives us evidence to say, despite this is happening, you were still able to do this. You were still able to feel so much better about those things that you're achieving. I've been working with a young girl at the moment who has a fear of being left in the car while her parents go to the co-op. Okay, just a normal thing. And we were talking this week about the fact that she was able to go in the deep end and jump in the deep end and swim, and it was great. And it's a running thing, because at our leisure centre they have these black grids. And I remember being a kid at that swimming pool and them saying, you've got to swim fast because the sharks will come out the grids if you don't. And then the teacher would say, it's all right, they only get the naughty ones. And we were having a chat about it. And I thought, God, that's crazy. Like 20, 25 years later, you're still saying the same stuff. You're still freaking these kids out with these shark stories that aren't real. I mean, what is going on? And she laughed about it. She thought it was really funny. And I said, so how come then you can jump off there into the water and it feels amazing and you feel really confident doing it, because I couldn't? And she suddenly started to think, wow. I said, so what feeling does that? She said, oh, I'm really brave. I was like, wow, okay, so where can we use that feeling of being brave elsewhere? Where could you put that? And then it just started this really fantastic conversation of her noticing when she's been brave and how we can put it into different parts of her life and recreate that feeling again, so that she doesn't have to worry about the fear that she originally came with. But also with fears, particularly if they're ones that are so you've got fears and then you've got phobias. So phobias are very different because it's a specific thing. So we have tools and techniques that do that support that, so that people can actually get over those and then do those things that they want to do. Oh, Amy said the same thing happened to her. Yeah, why do they say this? You know, our little brains are like sharks in the pool. I'm not going to swim. Of course, yeah. I'm not going to go swimming. Thanks.
Yeah, no, definitely. Mine's spiders. My mum, we used to live in a cottage. We used to get the big hairy ones, and then we used to make such a fuss. My mum used to then threaten. She used to chase us around the house with them, and I just hate big spiders now. I used to think like, Yeah, Helen, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, darling? Because I just want to make sure it's, oh, sorry, not you, Helen. Oh, Helen, was it you, Helen Coe? Do you have a question, Helen?
It was me. It was me that wrote that. Just no, it's just that yeah, I mean, my daughter is highly sensitive, and since, well, I mean, she's always been worried about things like going in a lift, but there's no reason why she would be scared of that. That's sort of come from nowhere. But obviously since COVID and being in a lot of isolation, like when we came out of COVID, a plane going over, you know, what's that? What's happening? You know, obviously that's even heightened now as well with what's going on, you know, in the Ukraine and stuff like that. So yeah, her fears tend to come and go, and I can never sort of work out where they're coming from and what the rationale is behind it. But obviously it's for, I've always just seen it as an extension of anxiety that's manifesting in a sort of different way. But
yeah, so generalized anxiety is where we have anxiety over lots of different things. So when I'll use myself as an example. So when I got diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, and I couldn't drive, and I couldn't walk my kids to school, and I couldn't drive in the dark, and I wouldn't drive after 5 o'clock. And the only thing that kept me going was seeing my clients. It was just the really weirdest thing, but it was an actual fear, a physical reaction. I'd feel really sick. My heart would pound. I would be absolutely petrified of going anywhere on my own. I was scared I was going to hurt my children. It was crazy. But because my body was so stressed, anything that caused me any stress was then another stress. So it's almost like when you have heightened anxiety, we collect stuff, and the brain, especially the primitive brain, is really, really good at pattern matching. So if this over here feels a little bit like this, then I'll put that in there as well, and I'll keep collecting them. And then when the anxiety starts to come down a bit, you'll notice that she's just done it without even thinking about it, but then she might have replaced it with something else. So I like to think of it very much like Jenga, because all of those little pattern matches create that Jenga, and I work with little people to pull out those patterns so that the Jenga has to fall down. So we can't pattern match anymore, and we need to replace it with lots of reframing. So what would be different if you're able to do those things and do them comfortably? So if you think about so I said about the stress bucket earlier. If you think about the stress bucket, those things that we start to worry about go in there. And when we're really stressed, our brain suddenly goes, we just don't do that then. So I know that after having my son, I couldn't go into Sainsbury's. Sounds ridiculous, but the lighting in Sainsbury's was the same lighting as the room that I had my son in. And so therefore I couldn't go into Sainsbury's because my brain went, that's a scary place, don't do it. So I used to go to Tesco's, good for Tesco's, right? Because it was environmentally friendly and they had no lighting, it was all glass. So it was completely different. And when I look at how incredible a tool my brain is to be able to go, yeah, I'll pattern match them and keep them for you, thanks very much. And we do that when we're in anxious states, especially when we've got a lot of cortisol running around the body and we're not able to understand how to process it and move it forward. Does that help?
yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have anything else? I mean, Amy said, thank you so much. I'm feeling really reassured with doing some of the things you've suggested, have learnt lots of new things to enable me to be a better parent. Anybody else have anything else they want to ask? Just unmute yourself before we hop off. Great, we're talking about Jaws now. So I was saying I'll scuba dive because I can see all around me, but I won't do the snorkeling with the water like that because the camera always did that in the water, and I hate having that on the mask. Hate it.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, darling.
It's more about first thing in the morning when it's like, morning, how you doing? And it's, I'm tired, I don't want to go to school. Negative, negative, negative. I'm like, can you think of something that would be good today? No. And I'll leave it. But then it's, how can we turn that around so that it's not a push to think of something positive, but it would be good to start the day in a positive way.
Okay, so that's where the what's been good at night helps. Because if we're going to bed and asking what's been good, and then you ask what would be different in the morning if you were feeling happier, you will then get an answer or hope to get an answer. Or even what would your day look like tomorrow if you woke up feeling happier, and really explore it that way. Ultimately, sounds very much like she potentially isn't getting enough REM sleep. And if we're waking up in that REM pattern early on in the morning, sort of like 6:30, 7 o'clock, we naturally just want to pull the duvet over our head and just grunt at everybody. So in that sense, I always say to people about being mindful, because we have two sets of people. We have the night owls, which I am, that would work sort of like 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I am at my best right now, thankfully. And we have the early birds. I am not one of those. Our kids are no different, you know. So I have one child that will get up at 5:30 and she's like, la, 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 the world is great, takes herself to bed at 7, good night, goes to sleep. I have another child that gets up, grunts for at least 2.5 hours. Everything's going to be shockingly terrible. And then we still go to school. So it's just thinking about where they fit in that cycle of sleep. Maybe look at trying to adjust your sleep a little bit better, a bit more downtime before bed. So, you know, big factor here is, you know, are we watching television and things that are keeping us in a wired state? Takes the brain an hour and a half to go back to normal state after we've been on tech. So be mindful of where you stop in the tech and how long we need time to chill, so the brain can get back into that relaxed state before going, oh, now it's bedtime. Yeah, that should help. And, you know, send her the audio to listen to and put her in a good space.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Thanks.
All right.
My husband just said, not for me. Takes me nothing to go to sleep. He'll literally, he's working till like 11 at night now. He just comes straight up, hits the pillow, and he's like, and I'm still there after an hour, like trying to get to sleep. Men, you just sleep like that anywhere. That's crazy. Oh, that's funny. Oh, Nicole, this has just been absolutely amazing. So I've posted your website in there. And yeah, guys, please do reach out to Nicole, like book in a discovery call and find out what she does for your little people, because I think it's like, I always say as parents, we need an army of people. And I think when it comes to positive mental well-being and thinking in a positive way with all of the mental health crisis that we have happening in our young people, I think to catch them young, and I wish I'd had stuff like this, you know, is your cup half full or half empty? You know, and I found always that I was a half empty girl, and I would have loved to have had that toolbox of wonderful things to help my brain think in a different way when you hit the problems with the girls at school, when relationships broke down, when, you know, I would have loved to have had that. And I think it's empowering for our children to have these things where you could do a few sessions. And then, you know, it's not like it's forever, is it, Nicole? You take a break for 6 months, but then if they struggle, I think you said you had a girl that then came back a couple of years later because the exams hit in and then the anxieties came back, and she just came back to you like a safe place, just come and work that next bit out of her life. And I think our life evolves in stages. And I think those first years up to sort of uni and beyond, it's massive. You do all your learning and development there, your socialization, your becoming who you are. It's a lot. It's a lot.
I think ultimately one of the things that I knew from the beginning was I want to create this aspect where, you know, your mum has a therapist on speed dial like you would do in America. Why wouldn't you? You know, I've got a hypnotherapist. My son's had hypnotherapy. He's also having some sessions at the moment with another one of my colleagues about being more intuitive and trusting his choices and things like that. And like you're saying, Chloe, having an army of people to support them when they're going through physical changes, when they're going through emotional changes, when they're going through developmental changes. Because ultimately between 12 and 25, the brain is completely changing from a child brain to an adolescent brain to an adult brain. And they do all of this ridiculous work in that time while their body's trying to level up, as I like to call it. But also understanding that actually, you know, as parents, sometimes it might not be the young person, it might be me working with the parent, so the parent can reduce their stress levels to manage the young person, you know. So it's then saying actually, you know, a whole therapist, a family therapist, you know, to be able to kind of support all of those different dynamics that are going on, because we all go through those stages. I'm not adverse to having hypnotherapy. I'd be a crap therapist if I said I didn't have therapy. You know, anytime my bucket's full, I'm like, can I have a session, please? You know, because I know that I need to tap back in, because I cannot not be the best version of me for not just my family, but my clients too.
Yeah, No, I totally agree. And that army, you know, what we're trying to do at the B Plan with the Wellness Hub and everything is, you know, yes, we cover nutrition and maximal nutritional intake for a healthy body, but it's all the pillars. And what you're doing is mindset. And I know that from speaking to leading sort of natural health practitioners, they say the mind is actually your core focus for health, followed by nutrition, and then, you know, exercise and things like that. But actually, if your mind is toxic and negative, what good can you, yeah, it's like a rust in the body, and it eats away at you, you know. It's so important. So Nicole, just to say thank you so much. I'll make sure I send you a recording of this. I've written down I need to do you a lovely testimonial for your website as well, or get Arthur to do one. But yeah, thank you for giving up an hour of your time this evening, everybody, and especially to you, Nicole. Thank you for all the questions, everybody in the comments. There's been so much chat going on. It's been fantastic. And yeah, and please do, best thing you can do is go on her website in the next 24 hours and say hello and check out what she's doing. Print off the down, you know, go into the audio, get that downloaded, and the spreadsheets and all those kind of bits to help you, because our little ones need everything they can get right now, I think. So yeah, everyone's found it really fascinating. That's fabulous. Thank you, Nicole.
Thanks, guys.
Really appreciate it. Appreciate you. Thanks, everybody. Lots of love to you. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.